So I ask you to look at and try and sort of define for me then the two basic types of sporting injury. Here's what I've got for you, okay? I'm sure you've got similar things. Well, we can say that injuries can be classified as either chronic or acute. These two terms are very important, so please make sure you're aware of them and you're able to define them. Chronic injuries and acute injuries. Now, chronic injuries, they're caused by continuous stress on a body part over a period of time, okay? Here are some common chronic injuries, and they're called in their sort of basic terminology. Tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, and also shin splints. You see, elbow gets quite a lot of damage there. It's used quite a lot in racket sports and sports where there's manipulation, constant use, continual stress placed on that joint, okay? And that can cause a lot of problems. Boxers also get problems with their elbows, particularly if they miss a jab or they miss a punch when they're training or fighting. Okay, shin splints. Again, this is a very, very common injury in teenage players. I've encountered it quite a lot with some of the young lads I work with and the young girls I worked with in the past. And the medical advice is rest. You need to rest, and usually sort of over a period of time things will work out. What are the causes of chronic injuries then? Well, there's a multitude of different reasons. In basic terms, chronic injuries can be caused by training too hard or perhaps too often, okay, without rest, without the correct recuperation time in between. Not allowing time for recovery. I mentioned previously, I've got a back and neck problem. I suffered quite a bad injury in a car crash and I was keen to get back into training as soon as I could. And I came back too soon, with the resulting neck and back injury that I now suffer from, okay? You might see from time to time in the videos, you see me cricking my neck or doing this with my shoulders. That's just because I'm feeling very, very tight and stiff around this area, okay? It's been a long-term problem for me. We also see in some cases that poor footwear can cause chronic injuries, particularly in terms of back injuries there and around the spine, okay? Here are some people getting problems with the sacroiliac joint, sometimes caused by poor footwear. And of course, poor footwear can obviously cause problems for the feet, the ankles and the knee joints as well. A big one there is bad technique. If we use bad technique repeatedly, okay, this will compound an injury. It'll get worse and worse and worse. And I can think of some examples of people who I've known for quite a long time who've got chronic injuries. And a lot of that was down to using bad and poor technique and not being coached properly when they were younger. I'm sure you can think of some other ideas as well, okay? It's well worth looking into this one in a little bit more detail and getting some information around chronic injuries. Overuse injuries we've touched on. Now, when we look at overuse injuries, these can really occur due to repeated, powerful muscular movements, okay? Using the muscles. I've touched on golf and tennis. And they do put an awful lot of stress on the elbow. So in golf and tennis elbow, the tendons that attach muscles to the elbow joint, they become inflamed, okay? They become very sore and very painful. You might have heard of people taking painkillers and anti-inflammatory tablets, such as ibuprofen, when they have joint pain. The idea being there that ibuprofen contains something which is an anti-inflammatory agent. It takes away that inflammation in the joint and is a form of pain relief. Of course, these injuries are best treated by applying an ice pack and resting for several weeks. However, some people don't want to do that, such as myself, and they'll resort to taking medication for a quick fix. But it doesn't always work, I'm afraid, okay? Ice and rest is the best course, really. Okay, let's take a look at acute injuries there. And I'd like to make it clear, this is very much a basic introduction to sporting injuries here. You certainly need to do some more reading around and find some more information. I really don't have the time to go through all of these in incredible depth that is needed, okay? So, an acute injury. Acute injuries occur when there's a sudden stress placed on the body. There are three main causes, okay? The first one we're going to consider is a collision, okay? Now this can be a collision with an opponent or an obstacle. Hitting something quite hard. There's an image there you'll see of a gentleman called Phil Babb. ex-professional footballer. Some of you may be aware of Phil Babb. Played most famously for Liverpool in the 90s. He was also an England international, okay? Now, Phil Babb had quite a famous accident. It was against Chelsea, I think, in the late 90s or early 2000s, where he collided with a goalpost. I'm going to let you take a look at the video, which I've included. The link is there. Please have a look. I'm not going to comment on it too much. However, I think you may want to get some tissues ready because there may be some tears in the house, okay? Not the most pleasant of images coming up. It's not horrific or graphic in that way, but it certainly was a painful experience for Mr. Babb. Take a look at this one, okay? It's a great example of a collision injury.